You'll be hearing from me a little bit more throughout the weekend, but I'd like to begin this session on KidneyWorks. If you attended last year's convention, you may recall learning a little bit about this initiative. Well, I'm pleased to share with you that the collaboration between MEI and AAKP has taken off full speed ahead. And in June of this year, AAKP and MEI, we hosted some of the most passionate, influential minds for a two-day session in Washington, D.C. that was held at the Hall of States. And the participants, we had some fairly high-level participants in this activity. CMS, Center for Medicare and Medicaid, folks from the Department of Labor, National Institute of Health, DaVita, Fresenius, DCI, Baxter, social workers with expertise in vocational rehabilitation, fellow patients, and more were present. Today we have a few of those participants with us who are going to discuss it. And it's a very exciting activity. But before we begin, I'd like to take a second and introduce each of the panel members, and then they will come up, and we have hopefully have time at the end for some questions and answers. First, to my right here, we have Ms. Dory Chattel. She's the Executive Director of the Medical Educational Institute, MEI, and it's a fellow nonprofit organization that's dedicated to helping people with chronic kidney disease learn to manage and improve their health. One of the things we're going to emphasize throughout the weekend is education, and MEI has a tremendous education resource available to everyone. And next to her, we have Dr. Richard Goldman. He's a member of AAKP's Board of Directors, and he's also chair of the association's program committee. He served on a number of boards, including, but not limited to, the ESRD Network 15, Renal, as well as the Renal Physician Association, and was a former president of the Forum of VSRD Networks. Dr. Goldman has recently retired, that's the rumor, but if history is any prediction of the future, we'll be keeping him busy, and we're certainly fortunate for that. To my far left, we have Dr. Doug Johnson. He is vice chairman of the Board of Dialysis Clinic Incorporated, DCI, which is the largest nonprofit dialysis provider in the country, where they serve more than 15,000 patients across the U.S. DCI also cares for thousands of patients with chronic kidney disease, and I want to emphasize this, prior to dialysis in an effort to intervene early in the disease process to hopefully slow the progression of the kidney disease. And we're also honored to have recently named Dr. Johnson as one of the association's newest board members, so we're very excited about that. And directly to my left, last but certainly not least, you know, I've had some talking points here, and they say Brian Hess is a 25-year survivor of kidney disease. But the truth is, Brian Hess is a warrior. You can best believe that. And since the age of 6, he has lived with this illness while staying determined to continue his education and other personal goals. Brian's received 3 kidney transplants. He has experience with in-center hemodialysis, peritoneal dialysis, and most recently, home dialysis. In 2011, Brian graduated from the University of Central Oklahoma with a bachelor's in biology and a minor in English. Since his graduation, he has also published his first book on kidney patient education, titled Kidney Failure Won't Stop Me. Brian is a strong patient advocate. He's volunteered his time and expertise on Capitol Hill, speaking with individuals in Congress on important issues affecting patient care. He is also currently on AAKP's National Board of Directors, and we're pleased to have him here with us today. How about if we give all these great people a hand, and then we're going to go ahead and let them get started.
I'm so tired. Hi, everyone. I am so thrilled and honored to be here today. This is one of my favorite meetings of the year. I do a lot of talks all over the place, and I talk to a lot of professionals. I talk to a lot of nurses and a lot of social workers. I almost never get to talk to any doctors, so I'm always happy when there are a few here hanging around. And I really like to talk to consumers because you guys are kind of where the rubber meets the road, and the folks who come to this meeting are the ones who are interested in their care and want to do as well as they can, and we wish everybody was like you, and so happy. I have the privilege of being able to introduce this new KidneyWorks program to you. I've highlighted a couple of words on this slide in turquoise because I want to point out that KidneyWorks at this point is intended to be a program to help people whose kidneys have not failed yet to keep their jobs. Down the road, we would like to expand this program to help people who are already on dialysis to maybe get back to work. But that's not the focus yet because that is a very, very high bar. And we are two small but very committed, passionate organizations. And those are, of course, AAKP and the Medical Education Institute. So dialysis is part of the larger vision. Transplant actually counts, though, as CKD. And so what we're talking about is people who are either pre-dialysis or have a transplant and helping them to continue to work. Lots and lots of wonderful people came to the KidneyWorks stakeholder meeting that we had in late June, and a number of them are in this room, and it was a fabulous meeting. And I think that you're going to hear a little bit more about that from some other folks who are speaking because I got to peek at some of their slides. So I don't want to belabor this point too much right now because you will see it again. But just know that we had the right people in the room. We had nephrologists, we had social workers, we had people representing government. Everybody in the room was passionate about this, and it was a fabulous 2-day meeting. So we're working on that right now, writing up the results. But let's just, for background purposes, there are a lot of advantages to working for people who are working age, or people who are young at heart and would like to continue to work, because I would never be one to say that you can't work at any age you want to. Self-esteem, obviously, from having a job. Working actually has been proven to reduce depression, and depression is pretty common in people with any chronic disease, not just kidney disease. Working helps you stay out in the world and have social contacts, and that's important. It boosts your income, obviously, and perhaps your benefits, depending on the job. It's important to note that Social Security disability, and to an even lesser extent, supplemental security income, does not fully replace work income. So generally, and it will replace less the more you earn, as you can kind of see from this chart. And I don't want to beat this to death with a stick, but essentially, if you earn very little, it may replace up to not quite 60%. But if you earn more, if you earn the maximum that you can be taxed on, it's only going to replace less than a third. And so a lot of people don't realize that. What's really important is that a lot of doctors don't realize that. And so they may be suggesting disability, thinking about perhaps their own Cadillac disability policies that pay quite a bit more than Social Security does, and that's important to keep in mind. They don't know how little people will be living on if they opt for Social Security disability and don't have other sources of income. And of course, ironically, kidney failure often happens during the highest earning years, which then reduces the amount of the benefit that people will get for the rest of their lives. And so that's important to keep in mind as well. People generally do better if they keep a job, unless they are very low income. In stages 1 to 4 CKD, before you get to sort of within 6 months of kidney failure, there are some limitations, but they're not necessarily significantly more than the general public, because of course the general public, about 50% of Americans have at least one chronic disease. So it might be kidney disease, it might be heart disease, it might be diabetes, it could be any disease, but folks with earlier CKD are not necessarily tremendously less healthy or more limited in their ability to keep a job. Are there symptoms? Absolutely. Are there ways to deal with those symptoms? Yes. So there are things that can be done to help. And of course, it's also to the advantage of not just all of you folks with CKD, folks who work with folks with CKD, but also to the advantage of employers to keep good employees. It's very costly to have to retrain new people. You lose institutional memory. I mean, I know I've got staff. We're not a very big organization. There are 8 of us. But if I lose anybody, I lose so much because, you know, we learn things as we go along. It's also to the advantage of the dialysis providers and to Medicare and to all sorts of people when people keep their jobs and they pay taxes and they keep their health plans and, you know, they don't need to be use quite so much of the system's resources. So those are some advantages of working. What are we envisioning that KidneyWorks can do? There are a lot of things. And right now we're just kind of writing this up. But the first major problem is that a lot of people don't even know that CKD exists. They don't know anything about kidney disease. And I'm partly talking about the general public, which is largely hugely ignorant about it, but also people who have it may not know that they have it, and that's a problem. And people don't know what causes it. There's just a lot of basic ignorance about CKD. And increasing awareness of CKD itself can maybe help bring more resources to the community. Awareness of diabetes and the link between diabetes and chronic kidney disease, particularly type 2, which is the leading cause of kidney failure in this country. Type 2 diabetes is number 1, high blood pressure is number 2. Workplace screening has been proven to be effective, and I'm thinking of right now large companies like GM or Ford or, you know, name any big company, Apple. When they screen their employees, they find significantly more chronic kidney disease than people were aware that they had. So again, this goes to awareness. But how much can we do to slow the progression of kidney disease and keep a job when we don't know we have kidney disease? Not as much. So screening is going to be important. And then once people know that they have the problem, then we can help teach them how to protect their kidney failure and offer resources about what your rights are in the workplace, what sorts of steps you can take, how to manage the symptoms. There are ways to slow kidney disease. There are things you can do. It is not inevitable that kidney disease leads to kidney failure. It certainly can. It doesn't always, and it doesn't necessarily have to. So we want to activate people to take the steps that they can to protect themselves. Active is a key word. This study I thought was very interesting. I'm mostly not spending a lot of time on any one slide, but this one is really critical because what they found in this study was that every extra hour of physical activity a week slowed the rate of drop of kidney function by 0.5%. So if you exercise 2 hours a week, that would slow it by 1%. If you exercised for 4 hours a week, that might slow it by 2%. You know, that's a pretty big deal. And activity doesn't necessarily mean you have to stand there and do jumping jacks. You can do whatever activity you like. And let's face it, nobody likes jumping jacks. I of course, tremendously appreciated Dr. Gibney's talk, and he and I have met before, and I think he is absolutely fabulous and a wonderful choice for this meeting, and the program that he's doing is innovative and exciting, and I would like to see it spread all over the country. But he's right that the missing piece of kidney care, really any chronic disease care in this country, is activation of all of you, because you are the only ones who can do things like exercise. Like, I wish I could send my body out and have somebody else exercise it and return it to me. That would be amazing because I don't like exercise. I would love to do that, but I can't. If I have medications, I have to take them myself. If there's a certain way I need to eat, nobody else can do that for me. If there are treatments I needed to go to, nobody else is going to do it. And so you have to be involved in your care because you're the most important people. And that's not just lip service. It's the truth. So this is really important in activating people to be engaged in their care, to take the steps that they need to advocate for themselves. That's what we're all about. So KidneyWorks joint program between AAKP, which is a wonderful membership organization, and MEI, which is a wonderful education organization. And our skill sets really dovetail very nicely. It's really a privilege to work with AAKP, and we've just been thrilled so far. Working benefits all of you, all the people with kidney disease who are working age and want to work. and it benefits other people like employers. A lot of people don't have awareness of CKD, and what we're working on right now is a white paper that is a write-up of what happened at that meeting, of the literature that is surrounding who has CKD, how many people are disabled, how many could work, what are the sorts of symptoms, and in particular, what can we do about it? And what we came out of that meeting with is lots and lots and lots of wonderful recommendations and resources. And so what I'm doing actually this week and next week is getting that paper ready to send out to the folks who are on that committee so that we can take it to the next step. So thank you all very much.
Some of the slides I'm going to use, you've seen already. Many of the slides I'm going to use, I have borrowed from Paul Conway with thanks, particularly because he had no idea I was stealing them. Dory reviewed very nicely why KidneyWorks, what's important about KidneyWorks. This is reference to a study that was presented as a poster session at the American Society of Nephrology a few years ago by Paul Kimmel and Paul Eggers. And essentially what it shows is improved survival by being employed regardless of insurance status, improved transplantation rate by being employed regardless of insurance status, and improved peritoneal dialysis regardless if employed, regardless of insurance status. So it is very important to stay employed. There's a new reason, relatively new reason, that was brought to the fore, I think about 8 or 10 months ago with a lawsuit brought by a very large health insurer against a dialysis organization. And when CMS learned of this, they looked into it, and they have now requested more information about healthcare providers who steer people eligible for Medicare and or Medicaid benefits to enroll in a particular health insurance plan so that the healthcare provider gains financially, because private health insurance pays dialysis organizations more money than Medicare does per treatment. And CMS feels that this may be without taking into account the needs of the patients involved. And so this is another reason why KidneyWorks would obviate this, because as Dory said, we hope that KidneyWorks, education, and other tools for helping people with progressive CKD earlier in their course, before they come to ESRD choices, maintain their employment. Then the steerage business will go away completely. So why AAKP? Why did we get involved in this? Why do we like it as a project and think we are a great fit? First, KidneyWorks is entirely in keeping with our mission and vision, which essentially is to improve the quality of life for kidney patients through education, advocacy, and fostering of patient communities. This fits perfectly with what we intend to do. Second, our growing exposure in social media has been alluded to several times, but if you look at the page views and the sessions and the users and the increases in Twitter following, it's very impressive. We reach a lot of people, so it's a natural fit for us to be able to become involved in a program that benefits our membership and that we can disseminate to a lot of people. Also, AAKP continues to have very good collaborating relationships with many of the organizations who we needed at the table of stakeholders for the first phase of KidneyWorks. As Paul alluded to in his first talk, AAKP's role as an independent and uncompromised patient advocate is welcomed whether it's in the executive branch, the legislative branch, or the regulators. And finally, as we do with any program in AAKP, we have to look at the capacity of the organization to develop and deliver the program. And in doing this, we found that our executive director and our dedicated staff are second to none. They are diligent, they are hardworking, they are very, very smart. They complete what they start. We couldn't do this without them, but because we have them, we can do it. Our officers, our president by bylaw must be a patient, that is, must have either CKD, ESRD, or be a kidney transplant recipient. 50%, over 50% of our board by bylaw must be patients also, CKD, ESRD, or transplant recipients. And then finally, our organizational capacity is enhanced by you. Engaged members who are intelligent, who are educated about what they need and informed by their own life story as to what the right things to do are. So, how did we propose to operationalize KidneyWorks? Well, as Dory said, we had a phase 1 meeting in June in Washington, D.C., where the weather was 105 degrees and 700% humidity. And we know because Dr. Johnson and I and Dory and several others got lost walking back from the meeting. And the meeting, Dory has alluded to the stakeholders who were present. I just want to hit a few high notes. We had dialysis organizations. Very importantly, we had the U.S. Department of Labor there, the Office of Disability Employment Policy. We had representatives from Medicare, not only from the ESRD program, but also from the Health Insurance Specialist program. We had academic and practicing social workers. We had mental health counselors, exercise physiologists. Renal Physicians Association did not send a board member. They did not send a committee member. They sent the president of the organization, Dr. Becky Schmidt. We had the head of the NIH's National Kidney Disease Education Program, Andy Narva, there. And of course, we had multiple members of MEI and AAKP. And our job at this meeting was to examine in a facilitated manner the scope of the problem, and particularly regarding the ethical, legal, and regulatory issues that resulted in so many people coming to end-stage renal disease unemployed, to look at the barriers and to begin to develop some solutions by consensus. And we also hit upon a few ways to measure the success of the program going forward. That's what analytics means. And then, as Dory said, we intend to publish this as a white paper in a edited, credible nephrology journal so that people can begin to appreciate the problem and what the solutions might be. And from the paper, we hope then to develop a phase 2, which will be the development of a toolkit that'll include tools for dealing with the barriers and dealing with the problems of people with progressive CKD maintaining their employment. And then finally, phase 3 will be developing an implementation plan, because no matter how good the toolkit, no matter how informed the stakeholders are, we need to figure out a way to get it out and get it used by the entire population of nephrologists and progressive CKD patients. Thank you.
Yeah, I got it.
Good man.
Thank you.
Doctor, you're functional, man.
A functional doctor, incredible. Okay, so I'm curious, for the audience, how many of you are on dialysis currently? For those who are on dialysis, how many of you are younger than 65? And how many are still working? Everybody give them a hand. Now, is there anyone over 65 who's still working? Okay, so I am here to tell you, for those of you who are working, I think you are working despite the system instead of because of the system. And I think you guys, raise your hand again if you're working. Do you guys agree that you're working despite the care you're receiving instead of because of the care? So I will tell you, so I'm Doug Johnson. I'm vice chair of the board of Dialysis Clinic Incorporated. We are a nonprofit provider. We started here in Nashville. We started 45 years ago when my dad, Keith Johnson, opened one dialysis clinic to save the lives of 8 patients. So at the time, Medicare did not cover dialysis, and so people with kidney failure were dying because there was no therapy available. Fortunately, Medicare does now cover dialysis. We now care for about 15,000 patients. But I will tell you, as a leader for DCI, so we are the largest nonprofit in the country. We also are the 4th largest provider in the country. I will tell you that honestly, for 45 years, we have not done a good job to make it more likely for you to be employed. And so I am so thankful that both MEI and AAKP has the leadership to get us to analyze this and look at this so that we can provide a better job of making sure that people with kidney disease can stay employed. And I know you can look at the dollars and cents, but I will tell you from my point of view, I love my job. My job is such an important part of what I do. It's nice to get paid for working, but I'm not really doing it because of my salary. I'm doing it because I find value in what I do. And I can't imagine what my life would be like if I wasn't working. And so I want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to work with you so that it's more likely for you to be able to keep working if you do transition to dialysis. On the DCI side, we also operate 3 organ procurement organizations in Tennessee, New Mexico, and California. Because of the work of DCI Donor Services staff, we have more than 500 people received a kidney transplant in 2015. That may sound kind of strange for a dialysis provider, but I don't really think we are a dialysis provider. I really think we're more of a kidney health provider. We've been talking about, in the past, we've worked in silos to improve care. What I'm excited about as we're now going forward is we're looking at better ways to provide overall care for patients with CKD, for individuals with CKD. And I want to share that vision with you because I think if you look at the way that we're approaching care, you'll probably be able to see how this could help make it more likely that you could continue to be employed. Number 1, our primary goal is to delay dialysis. So when we work with people with chronic kidney disease, we are saying we want to keep you off dialysis. And the reason is because if I had CKD and I could avoid dialysis, I would see that as a real success. I know that's probably weird to hear a dialysis provider say that, but we think it is the right thing to do. Number 2, if you need dialysis, we're going to give you the best care possible. Number 3, if you're on dialysis, we're going to look at opportunities to get you off dialysis. If I had kidney failure, I would want to have a transplant instead of being on dialysis, and so we want to do everything possible to make sure that you can get a transplant. We've started a company or a division called Reach Kidney Care. We now care for more than 4,000. This says 3,500. As of Friday, we've gone up to 4,000. We now care for more than 4,000 patients in 29 different locations in 16 states. Primary goal is to keep people off dialysis, but I will tell you the other big goal is to care for you wherever you are in the progression of your kidney disease so you can get the best care possible. If you look at individuals with less than 45% of their kidney function, only 11% will end up on dialysis. So why are we talking about dialysis? Why don't we do the best thing for you where you are instead of looking at where you might be? This is the population we're managing right now. And I think as we look at opportunities to work with individuals to make it less likely that they lose their job, I would love to partner with AAKP and MEI to look at opportunities to find out what the barriers are and which patients are having the biggest challenges. So we do have a large population of individuals who are at different levels of kidney disease, and so we would love to partner with AAKP and MEI to learn better what the barriers are. Okay, so here's my general thoughts, and this is more tied to care, but I think if we can do a better job of addressing individuals as they have CKD, we can make it more likely they can keep their job. Number 1, if you have a transplant, you're more likely to work. You guys agree? Absolutely, good. How many here have a transplant? That is awesome. Congratulations, give them a hand. That's fantastic. So my bet is we would all agree that transplant is the optimal therapy for many people with kidney failure. The sad news is only 2.6% of people are able to get a transplant before they start dialysis. We know we can do much better. The commitment that we made earlier this summer is we want to quadruple that rate for individuals going through our CKD care coordination program, get up to 11%. You may say that's aggressive. I will tell you the Northwell program in Long Island has 11% preemptive transplant rate. The Rogerson program in New York City has an 18% preemptive transplant rate. We can do better, yeah. Number two, if you're not on dialysis, it's easier to keep a job. So number one is slowing progression, and we've already talked about that. But the other part is I think when I look at individuals who are starting dialysis today, that there's an opportunity to start people later in their progression of CKD. So the most recent data that we have is from the USRDS in 2015, looking at 2013 data. According to that data, 12.6% of patients start dialysis with a GFR greater than 15. So in 2013, that was about 13,000 patients. Our largest CKD program is in Spartanburg, South Carolina. We've had 101 patients start dialysis through our program since January 1 of 2014. 0 had a GFR greater than 15. So if we can watch you closely and start someone as late as possible in the progression, I think it's easier for you to be able to stay with your job and not lose your job. If you dialyze at home, you're more likely to keep your job. So according to data that we shared a year ago, but this is previously published data, if someone is on hemodialysis, someone starts hemodialysis, only 57% did not have a change in employment status 6 months after the start. If someone started with peritoneal dialysis, that number is about 70%. And we know if you dialyze at home, you're more likely to be able to keep your job because you don't have as much interference. The cool part from our CKD program, so first, if you look at new starts at home nationwide, 9.3%. Spartanburg's our strongest program, 37% of patients start at home. So if we educate early for those who do need dialysis, we know they're more likely to start at home. I think the other big piece is if you have a smooth transition to start dialysis, it's easier for you to keep a job. So nationwide, about 2/3 of patients who start dialysis receive their first treatment in the hospital. Now my bet, so for those of you who are on dialysis, how many of you had your first treatment in the hospital? My bet is when you were in the hospital, they probably said, "You're sick. I don't know if you're going to be able to continue your job." That's not the message I want you to hear. I want you to hear we're going to do everything we can to allow you to keep your job. And so I think, one, it's hard. If you're in the hospital, it's hard because you're missing time from work if you're working. But I think the other part is it's easier for your condition to become a medical. You're focused on the medical piece instead of the personal piece. And we want to work with you to make sure that you're more likely to keep your job. In Spartanburg, South Carolina, for those patients who started dialysis, 2/3 through our program started as an outpatient instead of starting in the hospital. So it's the flip, twice as many as nationwide. And I think if you have a smoother transition to the clinic, it's easier for you to work with your employer as you're transitioning to dialysis. It's also, you don't have that interruption for a hospitalization. If you start with a fistula, I think you're more likely to keep your job because you're less likely to have an infection, less likely to be in a hospital. Nationwide, as you guys probably know, 80% of patients start with a catheter. In Spartanburg, 68% of patients started with a fistula, never had a catheter. So that's a lot of little pieces that I think we're looking at from a clinical point of view that hopefully will help you or help anyone as they're transitioning. There's one big piece, though, that's absent, and that is I haven't said a word about programs that we have in place to work with you to make it more likely you can keep your job. And so I'm excited to be working with AAKP and MEI so we can develop those programs. Hopefully we can come back next year and talk more about this. I would love to have a deadline, so I have to give you more information on what we're doing, but I think there's a real opportunity to do much more. And so this is my friend Bill Peckham. How many out in the audience know Bill? So Bill is an incredible person. He's been on dialysis for 25 years. When he was a kid, his family went down the Grand Canyon, and he did not have kidney disease at the time. He'd had a busy summer, and so he said, you know, I've had a really busy summer. I'm going to stay home. I can go down the Grand Canyon anytime. 25 years ago, he started dialysis. He has done a number of incredible things, including dialyzing in every continent except for South America and Antarctica. But he used to say, you can do this, you can do that, you can't go down the Grand Canyon. Well, the good news is you can go down the Grand Canyon. So this is Bill Peckham on July 4th, Independence Day, doing the first dialysis in the Grand Canyon in about 30 years. I was fortunate enough, yeah, Bill deserves a hand. So I was fortunate enough to be on this trip with him. It was an amazing 8 days. Wonderful to see him live his dream. Now, I know that many of us don't want to go down the Grand Canyon, but we all have our own hopes and we all have our own dreams. And our goal on the DCI side, for the patients that we care for, is for our patients to have the life that they should have if it were not for their kidney disease. And so I think if we do a better job of caring for our patients, then everybody can have a better quality of life. Thank you.
I'm assuming most of you can't see me with this in the way. For my part, I want to talk to you about, once you're on dialysis, how you can still keep working or go to college or whatever you might want to do with your life that you think dialysis will not allow you to do. When I first started, right out of high school, I wanted to go to college, but I was already on dialysis. And so at first I just went at it the only way I knew how. My schedule in center was Monday, Wednesday, Friday, which pretty much took the day away from me. So I only went to class on Tuesdays and Thursdays. For a while I did this, and it was taking too long to even get a 2-year degree. And I eventually realized, and my doctor thankfully agreed with me, maybe I would do better with the home therapy. So in 2003, I switched to PD, and from that point on, I was able to take classes 5 days a week. And it made a huge difference in my health because I was living a normal life during the day and then getting my dialysis overnight while I slept. I was able, thankfully, to then stay on PD throughout my college career to graduation. Through all this, one of the things I learned that's important when you want to work or go to college while on dialysis is you need to be able to manage and control your time and your schedule. If you need in-center and that's your best option, then do that. But if you want a more productive life, my experience has been that home therapies make a difference because you're dictating when you're doing your treatment, whether it's in the morning or at night. You're dictating what days you're doing it on, and that opens up more time for the other things you want to do. I've also found that with peritoneal and home hemo, I've always had better health. So then I had more energy to get around campus when I had to go from one end to the other in 15 minutes. It gave me time to be up later studying when I needed to. At the same time, while I was in college, there were times where I wanted a job too, and even I thought I was crazy doing dialysis a job in school. And through that, I've learned over time that you need to know your limits. Know how much you can do, because if you push yourself too much, it may backfire on you, as it's done a few times for me, and I've learned the hard way to not always do as much as I want, do as much as I know I can. For me, I've learned that dialysis, you have to look at it as a part-time job. You might not want to, but you need it, and when you think about the time it takes to do it, it does take up a lot of time. I do home hemodialysis now, which is about 5 hours each time I do it, just for setup and running. If I do that 4 times a week, that's 20 hours. That's a part-time job. And then finally, the thing I've learned from all these together is to balance them. You balance your health life and your work life, and it can become a very productive thing. If you put too much emphasis on one or the other, then it can affect the other. One of the last jobs I had, I actually thought I could work full-time and do as much dialysis as I did. And for a while it was fine until the job started wanting me to work overtime every single day. That started to impact my health, and I realized I needed to dial it back, and if they couldn't help me with that, then I had to put my health first. So what I'm wanting to say with all of this is If you can manage your own time and control your scheduling, if you can do a home therapy if possible, which helps with this, know your limits and balance your life out, then working is a reality, whether it's a job or going to college or whatever you want to do as an adult. Dialysis does not mean this is over. Working and being a dialysis patient is possible. It's just not always easy. And anyone that's been on dialysis knows this. I don't ever want to tell anyone that dialysis is easy to do, but at the same time, if you embrace it, and especially in my opinion, if you do a home therapy, which you are in charge of it yourself, you're the one taking full control of the reins of what you're doing, it becomes easier. Not easy, just easier, because you're the one taking care of all this, and then you don't feel like we were hearing earlier, these patients at these hunker down units. Ultimately, the thing that I wanted you to know is that you can do what you want, you just have to go for it and don't give up. For me, when I was in college, it took nearly a decade to finish, but I was determined to do so, and I took breaks when I needed to. I did whatever I needed to. If I needed to do less classes at a time, I did that. And from the different jobs I've had, if I needed to quit one, I did. And when I felt healthy enough, I took one again. Ultimately, I did all these things simply because I said I'm gonna do it and just scaled back when I needed to. But no one can ever tell you you can't do something if you want to. That's your decision and not anyone else's. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. You gave great presentation there. Diana, how much time do we have for some questions?
10
Okay, if we have some questions, yes, ma'am. You got some?
Hi. Yeah, I'm currently stage 4, and when I was at stage 3, I didn't have any symptoms. At stage 4, I started to get some. I got nausea, and my nephrologist gave me medication for that, but I still have sometimes low energy and fatigue. And fortunately, where I work, they'll sometimes let me use comp time or something and leave early. But anyway, how would it work if I was working full time and I had PD at home? How much time would that work? How much time would I have? Would there be enough time to fit that all in? And how many other things could I do? Or my work life just be work and PD?
Okay, someone want to take that?
Oh, okay.
When I was on PD, I was on for 8 years, and I did a time where I was working while going to PD. If you're doing the exchanges, I would come home during my lunch hour and do a quick one. I would do one before I went and when I came home. And then, of course, if you're doing it at night, you just do it while you're asleep. But no, you can still work, you can still do your PD and still have time for yourself. Just because you're doing both does not mean that you won't have some free time in there. That's one of the good things about PD is you do have to make those times for those things, but they don't take so much out that you can't find the free time in between your exchanges or your job.
Great.
I'm stage 4 also, but I wanted to know, I heard it was 2 different types of PD, and I wanted to know, like, I do 4 hours right now. Now, do you have to do 5 hours on PD, like you just said you done 5 hours? Or it depends on your condition or the doctor?
Dick, you want to address that, please?
For PD, there are two techniques. One is daytime, where you do the exchanges. The other is automated, which is a cycler that works while you're asleep. That usually is 6 to 8 hours. PD prescription, and the time as part of the prescription, is dependent upon two important things. One is residual kidney function, how much kidney function a person has left, even if it's only 1%. And the other is their size. Larger people, more muscled people, generate more uremic toxins and therefore need more treatment time.
Hello, okay. I have a CKD. I'm a 3B. I have been stable with lupus. I'll go back a wee bit. My husband is an identical twin. His brother had diabetes and did not have to go on, and my husband did not. Because of that, for the last 20, 30 years, I read Diabetic Forecast, which gave a lot of the tests that you would require for kidney disease, because diabetes is many people have to go on dialysis for that. One of the reasons I found that I had kidney disease was I had regular creatinine, but because of Diabetic Forecast, I asked to have the flow rate. And my doctors had never done the calculation. I found out I was already at 3B, which is unusual. I'm here for the education. This is my second time. The first time I came was in Little Rock. And I'm here for the education for CKD, for the menus, the help for that. I do not have any interest in going on dialysis.
None of us do.
Or having a transplant. So that's mostly what I'm here for. And you said that you were involved with getting that set up for the education. I'm from California. You said you had something in California for that. So I'd like to know about that.
Absolutely. So, number one, turn around. Ed Dennis, raise your hand. You need to talk to this guy. He's awesome. So Ed is our lead CKD care coordinator here in Nashville. We are starting a program in Sacramento, California. So kind of close to you, but still a distance. I will tell you, so in general, with the structure for our CKD program, for you at stage 3B, number one, most likely you're not going to be on dialysis and you're not going to need a transplant. Right? And you have been stable. There are still things for you to do, and I will tell you, for most people, and it's interesting because you're unique, because you don't have kidney disease caused by diabetes or hypertension, right? Or possible. But what's interesting is when we're actually working with you, there is some education that we'll provide for you about your kidney disease, but most of the things that we'll talk about are control of your blood pressure, control of your blood sugars, exercise. Do you smoke? You don't have to tell me, but if you do, don't, or stop if you can. Weight loss if you need to have weight loss. So there are things that you can do that really will improve your overall health. I think you will feel better in general. The really cool part is it will also help your kidney disease. Just like Dory, you brought up the benefits of exercise, and it's really activity. The benefits of activity in slowing progression of kidney disease. So there are so many things you can do to control your own health. And I think you will feel better now because of the things that you'd be doing to improve your own health. The nice added benefit is also, I think, it will slow progression of your kidney disease.
Which part of California are you in?
Los Angeles.
Los Angeles. Oh, okay. All right, because I know there's folks here from the Bay Area Association of Kidney Patients, and you might want to talk to them. I'm not sure exactly how far their reach is, but I know they're at that table right over there. Raise your hand. There you go. Talk to them, too.
Okay, we have time for one more question. Here. Okay.
I know you talk about the what about the nutrition? The type of foods that you should avoid? I know you're not sugars and all that, but is there a guideline of certain foods that you should eat if you're not, keep that progression going along?
I don't think any of us at this table are as a dietitian, but I can tell you that in general, to the extent that you eat actual real food, not things that come in boxes and cans and bags even, but actual food that you grow in the ground, or that is in its unaltered
That
form.
rare stuff.
Real food, especially vegetables. Avoiding processed foods and deep fried foods and foods with lengthy chemical ingredient lists and foods in cans because the linings of the cans contain BPA. Real food makes a difference. And then moderate protein limits. Generally, you don't want to overdo the protein. Protein breaks down and increases the burden on your kidneys. Drinking reasonable amount of fluids if you don't swell up. Your personal diet needs to be worked out by your doctor, who hopefully is working with a dietitian, but those are just very, very general. Eat what your grandma would have made you, as long as it's not pickle juice and, food your grandma would recognize.
And I guess I would add that the hard part when you start talking about diet, a lot of it is don't do this, don't do that. And it's difficult to actually see a diet that you can eat, right? And actually a meal plan that you can have and still protect your kidney function. And so I think it's really helpful to sit down and talk with a dietitian about what types of meals work. And so I'm going to get Ed to raise his hand again.
Okay, we have
One more comment, if
yeah.
I might.
Yeah, absolutely.
There are going to be sessions at this
Yeah.
meeting that
that's
will
We'll
deal
have
with
a
this in much
full
greater
session
depth.
on this later
Great.
on.
Yes.
Okay.
Sunday morning, thank you.
Steve has a comment, and then we're going to break for lunch.
I just want to say, this has been excellent. But with respect to nutrition and what you eat and everything, it's extremely complicated. And I know in my practice, I have a very large CKD population. And with a reasonable amount of success, keeping people away from the dialysis unit. And one of the things that I attribute that success to is every one of my patients gets referred to a renal dietitian.
Absolutely.
Sits down with that patient one-on-one, goes over exactly what they should and shouldn't do with respect to their diet. Everybody is different. And so we really need that additional attention. Most of us doctors are not as prepared. People say, don't eat this, don't eat that. But the dietitians are fantastic. So I submit to you that if you talk to your doctor, if you have kidney disease, talk to your doctor and say, I want to see a dietitian. They'll probably love you.
Okay, listen, we're going to break for lunch, folks. But we can continue this on when we get back during one of the other sessions. Please ask your questions. How about if we give everybody up here a big hand? A big hand. Done a great job. And we're not just going to have lunch, but we're going to have lunch with the experts. So I think all of you will have a number in your packet that will indicate the table, and lunch is right down the hallway here to your right. And look.